Welcome to another episode of Let's Code. Very happy to have you here again today, and excited about the topic. Last couple of weeks ago, we had Mark Studley on from our Runtimes team, and he had some very exciting information about what was happening with Eclipse Adoptium and with the Adopt OpenJDK move to Adoptium, and some of the things were happening with runtimes. And today we've got him back along with Morelli to discuss the future of OpenJDK with Eclipse OpenJ9 for cloud native Java. And Mark, would you introduce yourself again and let us know a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks, Neil. It's great to be back. My name is Mark Studley. I'm the IBM Chief Architect for IBM Java. As well, I'm also the project lead or one of the project leads for the Eclipse OpenJ9 project.
Great. And Morelli, you're here first time with us today. Please introduce yourself.
Thanks, Neil. It's a pleasure to be on this particular session. Myself, Murli. I've been working with Java technologies for over 20 years now. Been with the IBM Java Runtime Technologies team for 21 plus years. In my current role, I am the product manager responsible for IBM Runtimes, and more specifically, the Java Runtimes.
Great. Well, I understand there's some exciting news announced earlier this week about the IBM Semeru Runtimes, and I wondered if Morelli, if you could just tell us a little bit about them and what they are, how they're being provided to our developed audience.
Indeed, that's a very pertinent question. Exciting news indeed. So IBM released the IBM Semeru Runtimes earlier this week, 3rd of August. So what IBM Semeru Runtimes are specifically, these are Java runtimes through which IBM makes it easier for developers to develop and deploy applications, develop and run applications, Java applications across a wide range of platforms and deployment environments. Right, that's what these runtimes are, at the core. IBM runtimes use the same class libraries from the OpenJDK project, along with the Eclipse OpenJ9 virtual machine, to enable developers to develop and deploy Java applications. And given that these are powered by the Eclipse OpenJ9 virtual machine through its distinct attributes, developers are able to develop applications that start quickly, deliver great performance, and also use less memory. Right? That's the distinct feature or the capability of the OpenJDK with OpenJ9 runtime, and more specifically, the branding of that runtime as IBM Semeru Runtimes here. We built the IBM Semeru Runtimes using the same build scripts and approach as at the Adopt OpenJDK project previously. The same way Adopt OpenJDK project was building the OpenJDK with OpenJ9 binaries. These binaries are built exactly the same way. It's just that it is IBM building and distributing these binaries as opposed to the Adopt OpenJDK community now. I'd also briefly want to touch upon the key highlights of the IBM Semeru Runtimes. They provide a stable, no-cost environment for developing Java workloads. These are available at no cost. As I said, these are available at these are available across a wide variety of hardware and software platforms. Whether it is on-prem, public cloud, hybrid cloud, bare metal, virtualized environments. Across all deployment environments and platform architectures, available free of cost. As I said, these are available for the more commonly used JDK releases like JDK 8 and JDK 11, which are the long-term supported versions. And the performance benefits come by way of deep technology or runtime technology investment by IBM in the OpenJ9 runtime, which is an open source project at the Eclipse Foundation as Eclipse OpenJ9. There are zero usage restrictions irrespective of whether it is for development environment or production environment. There are no usage restrictions across these binaries. So that, in a nutshell, is IBM Semeru Runtimes and the key highlights or the value proposition they offer.
Okay, great. need to ask a question. Why did IBM decide to create the Semeru runtimes? Just what led to that initiative, and maybe Mark, you could pick up on some of the stuff you covered last time and tell us about this.
Yeah, it's a good connection to actually the earlier talk that we had. It's actually a very exciting time for IBM to be sort of re-entering this space. You know, we have built our own IBM runtimes for more than 20 years. And about 5 years ago, we began our open source first strategy, where we were working with Adopt OpenJDK and building our binaries there. And now things are kind of, we're going back to IBM building it. So yeah, so let me explain a little bit about why that happened. So it's really a consequence of how things developed as Adopt OpenJDK was moving into the Eclipse Foundation as the Adoptium working group. So as the project moved under the foundation, obviously the Eclipse Foundation has a very strong focus on standards and establishing a firm legal foundation for the activities of the project. Now, standards means running the Java TCK or JCK, it's sometimes called the Java Compatibility Kit, which is a set of tests that's owned by Oracle. And so you can run those tests as long as you have, you know, a license, an agreement, a legal agreement with Oracle to do that. Eclipse was able to get an agreement to run the TCK on Java 8 and Java 11 and Java 11 and forward. But there were a couple of stipulations that agreement came along with, one of which was that they're only allowed to promote, distribute, and market TCK certified JDK binaries. So they have to run the TCK on anything that they produce, basically. And the second one, which from my perspective is a little bit unfortunate, but it is what it is that the TCK license that the Eclipse Foundation has cannot be used to run on a JDK that includes OpenJ9. And so from Adopt OpenJDK's perspective, this is kind of a gap, because obviously Adopt OpenJDK has kind of based itself on providing, you know, these two JVM options. You could either build OpenJDK in its entirety, which includes the hotspot JVM, or you could replace the hotspot JVM with OpenJ9 and use the class libraries from OpenJDK with the Eclipse OpenJ9 JVM. And there are lots of people who do that. And so, you know, this agreement meant that there was no longer going to be an option provided directly by Eclipse Adoptium to include the OpenJ9 JVM. And so here is where IBM stepped forward. Obviously, we care quite a lot about the OpenJ9 technology. It was originally a proprietary technology at IBM that we developed. We've now contributed it to the Eclipse Foundation and have been working at that project in the open for 5 years. 4 years. So we wanted OpenJ9 to continue to be available to people in the community. You might not realize this, but IBM is actually one of the earliest Java licensees. We've been a licensee since 1996, I believe. And so we've been running the TCK against our IBM SDK for Java for decades, and that's based on the OpenJ9 technology. So rather than see these OpenJ9 binaries go away in the community, IBM has now stepped up to provide them under the IBM Semeru Runtimes name. You know, just like all the other OpenJDK vendors have their distributions of OpenJDK, this is IBM's distribution of OpenJDK. We just happen to include the OpenJ9 JVM, which is, I believe, unique among the OpenJDK distributors. And as Murali mentioned, we're providing them at no cost and under a flexible set of licensing options. This is our first release that we just started. This which came out on Tuesday. So we've got a couple of teething pains, but we'll get there. Everything's there. Downloads are available. We'll get things a little bit more smoothly in terms of timeframes and getting all the things together in one time going forward. But I think we're in great shape here, and I'm very proud of what we've accomplished in releasing these IBM Semeru runtimes for the community to use.
Sounds terrific. I'm posting a few links in some of our chat, and we'll hopefully people will go check it out. One of the questions that always comes up, especially as we look at enterprise adoption, is what about support? How are these binaries being supported? Maybe Murali, you can take a stab at answering that.
Right. I think before we get there, there's this another prominent question, Neil. If I might put it across, we're also asked why we have two editions of these binaries, right? If I might take that earlier, fine with you?
Mm-hmm. Yes, please.
Okay, so we do have the IBM Semeru Runtimes. As you see, it is a plural to signify that there's more than one. Both are exactly identical. The two editions of these particular binaries being that of the only difference being that of across these two editions being that of different licensing, right? So there is the IBM Semeru Runtime Open Edition, which is distributed under an open source license, that is GPLv2 plus class path exception. And then we also have the IBM Semeru Runtime certified edition. So there's the open edition and there's the certified edition, which is distributed under an IBM license. Okay. Both of the IBM Semeru Runtimes pass the comprehensive Eclipse AQA with quality assurance test suite, which kind of ensures the stability and the enterprise grade quality of these runtimes. So as the name indicates, the IBM Semeru certified edition is also JCK certified, unlike the open edition binaries. So we have the Semeru Runtime Open Edition, which is with an open source license, not certified, not JCK certified, and then the IBM Semeru Runtime Certified Edition, which is distributed under an IBM license and certified. Now to the other subtle differences. The only differences are in some Java properties. Most notably, the Java vendor has changed to reflect that these are IBM built, saying, to kind of distinguish this from, who has built these binaries, right? These are IBM built binaries now. There are a few other version changes also to communicate properly what these binaries are. Otherwise, functionally, both these binaries are exactly the same and are built from the same OpenJDK class libraries and the Eclipse OpenJ9 Java virtual machine, right? So why do we have, more specifically, why do we have two different flavors or two different editions out here? Essentially for flexibility reasons. Some customers, developers, customers, enterprises are used to being on a fully open source software stack. They have a preference for obviously the open source licensed open source licensed Java or the open source licensed Semeru Runtime edition out here. There are other enterprises who have been historically or traditionally using and are comfortable with a branded license, right? And that's why we have the IBM licensed edition in Semeru Runtime certified edition. That essentially covers the differences between these two binaries, or why we have two different variants.
I think it is important to note, however, that both of the editions have been run. The quality tests that are at the Eclipse Adoptium project, so the Aquavit testing suite, which is actually quite a comprehensive quality assessment testing. It actually was seeded by the IBM release testing. So the testing that we used to perform before releasing, when still do, releasing our IBM SDK for Java. Those tests have been run on both versions to assure that they're high quality and ready for use for developers and in production, regardless of which edition you use.
Absolutely. Thanks, Mark. And one last point is that it's important to highlight that the open edition binaries are the ones that are already GA'd, earlier this week, Tuesday. The certified edition binaries will be available soon, starting the September time frame.
Great. And did you cover support in terms of?
Absolutely. I'll get to the support point. So support-wise, the IBM Semeru runtime binaries themselves are available at no cost. So one doesn't have to pay to get to download, use, deploy. No restriction of use across deployment environments or use cases, development or production, right? So as with community support, you typically gets the bug fixes and security fixes free of cost. But what's not available with community support is the enterprise grade or the production grade support, right? That you are having the assurance of you have somebody to call or report a support ticket and get assured support and a dedicated a support line, which will then and a set of engineers who will work your problem to provide a resolution, or whether it's a workaround or a proper fix, right? And to be able to champion these fixes in the open source communities, where we work. That's where IBM is uniquely positioned by way of its more than 20 years of enterprise grade support for IBM software or products for which we have been providing support, and also through our active leadership in the open source communities that constitute the source code for these binaries, right? So we are uniquely positioned to be able to provide that quality of support. I should also call out that the runtimes for the offering through which we provide support for this commercial grade support for IBM Semeru Runtimes is IBM Runtimes for business, and for products like IBM Liberty, IBM Runtimes for business is already included as a supporting program. So support for IBM Semeru Runtimes is included by default for customers of products like Liberty. Just a minute on the key value proposition of the support offering, or the IBM Runtimes for business support offering. The unique value proposition is customers need to pay only for the environments where they want defect support, right? The security updates remain free. Okay, and the other unique value proposition of IBM Runtimes for business is while we prefer customers on board the IBM Semeru Runtimes with the high performant OpenJ9 JVM, the Runtimes for business offering also includes support for the Eclipse Temurin binaries, right? So we also support the OpenJDK based hotspot VM binaries from the Eclipse Adoptium project. The other unique value proposition is that we also include enterprise grade performance monitoring solution for monitoring and managing Java workloads. So with Runtimes for business, that's something that comes in as a value addition. So it's not just a support offering for IBM Semeru Runtimes or the hotspot-based Temurin binaries, but we also have monitoring and management software included in it. And there's also additional flexibility by way of licensing options, whether it is perpetual term license, depending on whether your requirements are CapEx-based or OpEx-based, separately priced parts for server and desktop deployments as such. But the bottom line is that support is backed by IBM's world-class support organization, with over 20 plus years experience in supporting Java in the enterprise. So that's the whole value proposition of Runtimes for business, and we're happy to have IBM Semeru Runtimes folded into this offering for support.
Great. Good to hear about the different options available to clients doing open source, or wanting that open source aspect, or enterprise clients looking for that full level of IBM support.
Absolutely.
Mark, I wanted to pick up on something you said earlier about the Aquavit testing, I think you were calling it. Wondered if you could maybe help me understand the difference between that and what the TCK is providing.
Sure. So it's Aquavit, AQAVIT is how you spell that. It basically, it's a, so the TCK is designed to test adherence to the specification, the Java specification, which is, there's a book that you can get that talks about what it means to run Java properly. And the TCK is a set of tests that instantiate that knowledge and those set of requirements. It also tests APIs and makes sure that the APIs in the class libraries are being properly implemented and adhered to. And that's obviously a very important thing for the industry, to make sure that you have, the different implementations of Java will be, interoperational and be able to function properly. But there's a whole host of concerns that the TCK is not really designed to address. And that means sort of, as you start building larger and larger things, you're concerned about things like, is it going to be able to handle a stress load? Is it going to be able to run a bunch of functional tests? If I combine different things together in all kinds of different ways, the TCK is very good at outlining all of the little details, but there are still some implementation defined areas, and there, those can be differences. And when you start collecting up all of those differences, you want to make sure that you're still running an application properly. You could adhere to a spec in all of the right places, but if you do something wrong, something that's not specified, but you could get the wrong answer, right? You don't want that. So what you really want is a big collection of Java tests that help ensure that you're actually running Java code correctly. And they're complementary in that sense. And then there are other, areas like, if I have thousands of threads, is the implementation strong enough to handle thousands of threads without running into any race conditions inside the JVM implementation or anything like that? And so, there's a strong set of stress tests that happen as part of the Aquavit test case. There's lots of functional tests. There are tests that come from open source projects to ensure that the tests that are run in order to verify the correctness of some of the key open source projects are going to run properly on whatever JDK implementation that you've got, even under stress. And so, and then performance is another area that the TCK is relatively silent on that because that's considered to be sort of a capability of the runtime environment. It doesn't really matter if you do it slowly or you do it quickly, as long as you do it correctly, is kind of the way that the TCK approaches it. Whereas that's not really good enough from a release standpoint if you want to do build a good JDK. And so Aquavit is kind of, I would view it as a very complementary set of testing requirements that are very valuable for people who write Java applications and who want to deploy production Java workloads with huge scale, right? And make sure that your JDK is going to be able to handle it.
Yeah, it sounds like it provides a next level of confidence in what you're delivering. So that's good to hear. Got to ask, where did the name come from, and maybe where can we actually get those binaries, the downloads? Maybe Mark, could you enlighten us a little bit?
Sure. So we actually went through quite a fairly exhaustive and exhausting, if I'm truthful, internal process to come up with a name. We considered a number of different themes. We had an internal within the group, we had people submit names and ideas, and we discussed a lot of them. We ultimately kind of narrowed down on themes, and so there are a few themes that the Java community has sort of come up with that are being used to name all the different JDKs, right? So for example, we didn't really just want to call this our build of OpenJDK because we felt that OpenJ9 is an important component and a significant component that's in our runtime. And we didn't want to marginalize that. We wanted to highlight the performance advantages and the capabilities that OpenJ9 brings. And so, it's not just OpenJDK, if I can say that without offending anyone, I hope. We looked at coffee themes for a long time. Obviously, coffee is a big, very common theme. If you look at some of the other JDK distributions, like Amazon's Corretto is an Italian espresso with a shot of liquor in it. Bellsoft's Liberica distribution. Liberica is one of those categories of coffee beans, like Arabica, Robusta, Liberica. Alibaba's Dragonwell is a sort of Chinese take on this theme, which refers to a kind of tea. So they, very sort of homage to their Chinese heritage, which I thought was a very nice twist. But we felt that the coffee bean theme, or the coffee theme rather, it's kind of very, like everyone's doing it a little bit. And we didn't want to just be sort of just another one. The other major theme that we considered was, sort of the origins of Java, the name of Java, which is the island of Java in Indonesia. In fact, Java was originally named for the type of coffee that comes from Indonesia, which itself is named for the island of Java. And an example in this space was Jakarta EE, which is the Eclipse Foundation's new standard for enterprise Java, is named for the largest city region on the island of Java. Now, Semeru is actually the tallest mountain on the island of Java. And we felt that there were some nice associations with that. The first being that, so we like to market the IBM Semeru Runtime as a runtime for the cloud. Because of OpenJ9, it has a lot of nice features for working with containers, a low memory footprint, fast startup, etc., that make it quite attractive for the cloud. The peak of Semeru, the mountain, is often above the cloud line. So, I like to say it's the part of Java that's in the clouds, which I think is a nice association for us. Obviously, sorry?
Sounds good. Yeah.
Obviously, a mountain has been around for a very long time. They don't just pop up quickly, most of them, which reflects IBM's long involvement with the Java language, right? So as I mentioned earlier, we were one of the first licensees in 1996. And so, we've been supporting the Java language for almost as long, and innovating and working in the Java language ecosystem almost as long as it's been around. So that was kind of a nice thing to have. Now, Semeru is also an active volcano that's basically been continually erupting for decades now, and I liken that, it's a little bit whimsical, I guess, but I liken that to sort of the continuous innovation that we've been pushing into the Java runtime space via OpenJ9 and its proprietary precursor J9, right? Changing and adapting ourselves as Java evolves, as the island of Java changes, actively adding to the island of Java, if you like. And finally, Semeru is a popular tourist destination for Java. So I'll say that as, when you visit Java, you should really go see Semeru. So I think that's how we ended up with the name, and I think this is the runtime that you should really go and check out for yourself to run your Java applications. And as for where you can get it, so there's our website, ibm.com/Semeru-runtimes. There's a /downloads site that you can get your downloads there directly if you like. Also, in this transition period, moving from Adopt OpenJDK to Adoptium, the original Adopt OpenJDK site now has IBM Semeru binaries. If you select the radio button that asks for OpenJ9 binaries from that website, it will now serve up the IBM Semeru runtimes, and we're hoping that will continue for maybe a couple of one or two of the quarterly update releases, just while people are going through this transition and sort of moving over to Adoptium and to our Semeru runtime site. They'll be able to still get it where they expect it to be.
Right. Sounds great.
And Mark, eventually at the Eclipse Adoptium vendor marketplace as well, once that comes.
Correct. Right. So we're hoping that the vendor marketplace will be established at Eclipse Adoptium, and since IBM is a member of the Adoptium working group, as long as our binaries are TCK certified and have met the Aquavit quality standard, we'll be providing or submitting, I guess, our IBM Semeru Runtime Certified Edition to be hosted, or not hosted, to be marketed via the vendor marketplace at Adoptium. But that hasn't happened yet, so we're kind of like, we're hoping, but we'll see when that actually happens.
Right. Well, you, based on what you shared last time and this exciting news about Semeru runtimes being available now, I think there's some great stuff happening in the world of Java, and just for our audience, we're going to be continuing our focus on Java going forward. We're going to have a few episodes where we actually dig deeper into some of the advantages that Mark and Morelli were talking about in terms of the OpenJ9 builds and the runtime. We'll look at the metrics associated with the use of these Java technologies, these runtimes, in cloud-based environments where the world seems to be going. So, wanted to thank both Mark and Morelli for the information today, and check out the Semeru runtimes at the links provided. Any closing thoughts, Mark or Morelli?
No, just I hope everyone gives them a shot, gives them a try, and I think you'll be pleased with what we've produced here. We're very proud of it. The team's very proud of it, and we're going to continue doing it. So,
Absolutely. So if you're in the Java landscape, don't miss checking out Semeru, right? Or Semeru Runtimes. Okay, that's the tagline. It's been a pleasure being on this session, and we'll continue to engage, involve, and innovate in the Java landscape.
Great. Thank you. And for our audience, have a great rest of your day.